With the 2024 Georgia football season now just 2 short weeks away, it's time to do something that we do every single year here on the Glory UGA podcast and roll out some bold predictions for Georgia's 2024 season. Now, it will be up to you to decide just how bold these predictions are, but I've got 5 predictions that I actually believe will happen for the Georgia Bulldogs in 2024.
We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? I'm Tyler, and this is Glory UGA Plus, where I bring you a small taste of what we've got for you on the Glory UGA podcast. This video is brought to you by our great friends at MyBookie, and if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe right now. We have a ton of great content coming your way throughout the entire 2024 season. I actually have a couple of Clemson film session videos that I've been hard at work out behind the scenes coming your way next week, and you don't want to miss those. So subscribe right now, like the video, comment, all the above. That is a huge help, and it is sincerely appreciated. But with that, let's get to these bold predictions. And look, guys, my goal here today is not to just throw out the most wildly outlandish things that my mind can dream up. I know that's how some people approach bold predictions, and that's great. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just not how I go about it. My goal today is to, disregard caution and aggressively make some predictions, but to make predictions that I actually do believe in, that I believe have a very realistic chance of coming to fruition for Georgia this year. So that's how I approach it. That's just me. I know other people do it different ways, but that's how we're going about it here today on this video. Now, I usually start slow when I do like a top 5 list like this. Start slow, start at the bottom, build our way up to the top. But today, let's flip it on its head with these bold predictions, and let's start at the top with the most bold predictions that I've got for today, and then we'll work our way down the list. So coming in at number 1, what I personally think, it's up to you, I guess, to decide, but what I think is the most bold prediction on this list today, on this video, is that Georgia quarterback Carson Beck will break single-season Georgia records for both passing yards and passing touchdowns. Now, if you look at the numbers, that's going to take some, at least when it comes to passing touchdowns. Passing yards, I do think, is more within reach. And a part of this, for both records, it's just a numbers game. We are now in a new era of college football, guys. We are in this 12-team college football playoff era, which means there is a chance, we don't know if it will happen or not, but there is a chance that Georgia could play 16 or 17 games this year. There's no quarterback in Georgia history that has played more than 15 games in a single season. That's it. That's as far as we've gone. And in fact, it was the last quarterback to play 15 games in regular season for Georgia, Stetson Bennett, who currently holds the record. In 2022, Stetson threw for 4,127 passing yards, which is now the single season Georgia record for passing yards. Now, Carson was close last year, guys. I think he's number 2 right now. In 2023, Carson threw for 3,941 yards. That was only in 13 games. If we had played 15 games last year, actually that was only in 14 games. If we had played 15 games last year, would Carson have broken that record? Could he throw for like 180, 175 yards or so? Probably. But hey, he did not get the opportunity. And that's why, again, this year, I think he has a very legitimate opportunity. Going into his second year as a starter, I do believe Carson will be even better than he was last year. I do believe we will let this guy cook out of the gate in a way that we didn't really last year. It took us a couple of games, 4 or 5 games or so, to really kind of turn him loose and realize what we had in Carson Beck and gain that confidence in him. That will be the case from week 1 playing against Clemson, all right? So you have an opportunity to play more games. There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that Georgia will even get in the college football playoff. I do believe that Georgia will make the college football playoff. Will Georgia be a top 4 seed? Tough schedule. Maybe, maybe not. But if we do play 16, 17 games, I feel like it's essentially a no-brainer. If Carson, knock on wood, stays healthy this year, he will break Stetson Bennett's single-season passing record for the Georgia Bulldogs. Again, he was only about 175 yards or so off of it last year, and this year, very, very much in reach. I think that will happen. And look, now, the other part of this, the passing touchdowns, that is where I'm reaching here, and I will own that. Hey, they're both predictions, man, all right? You got to be aggressive, and I'm being aggressive with this one. Aaron Murray in 2012, which by the way, does Aaron Murray he just doesn't get the love he deserves. I know it's a different era of Georgia football. Man, if Aaron Murray is playing in this era of college football, dude would be, it's just absolutely insane. But he was awesome regardless. Anyway, in 2012, Aaron threw for 36 touchdowns. Carson last year only threw for 24. Not a math guy here. I think I got this math right. You can double check me if you want here. That would require Carson to make a 50% increase in his passing touchdowns year over year to break that record, okay? But again, I go back to what I said a few minutes ago. He does have an opportunity to play more games than any Georgia quarterback in history. More games than Aaron Murray played in 2012. So it's, maybe that's not exactly fair, right? But that's certainly on the table for Carson Beck this year. And the other part of this, guys, beyond just the numbers games for both these records, Carson Beck's just really freaking good, man. This guy was awesome in his first year as a starter, was so beyond his years plus. I mean, I guess he'd been around for a while, but as a first-year starter, if you consider the lack of experience, this guy was incredibly polished. Now going to year two, a year in which he's had not all the reps, but the majority of the reps with the number one offense. I mean, he is the unquestioned guy, and he was not that coming in last year. He was in a battle. Now, he was the leader in the clubhouse, but Brock Vandagriff was there. There was a battle. He was pushing him. There was some splitting of reps going with the number ones going back to spring practice and in the early stages of fall camp. But that's not been the case this year. He has been unquestionably the guy. This is his team. All right. So Carson Beck, I think we're as good as he was last year. I'm confident that we will see an even better version of Carson Beck this year. And I also think you have the ground game to go along with it. Like you said, well, the ground game would take away from Carson's opportunity to throw the football. Yeah, to a degree, but it also makes the passing game even more dangerous, right? Because you have a legitimate rush. Not that we didn't have a legitimate rushing attack last year. We did. We ran the ball well last year. But I think we have the best running back room that Georgia's had. I don't know, man. Since going back to like 2017, maybe, when you had Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, and DeAndre Swift in the backfield. I think that's the kind of room that we have when everyone is healthy. All right, so if you have that kind of running game along with the offensive line that we have that will give Carson time and also clear the way for these running backs to be very effective and create a strong running attack for Georgia this year, that's only going to make Carson's ability to throw off play action even more lethal, right? Now, I know the other part of this that people will probably throw in my face and want to push back on is you say, like, well, look at the schedule, man. Is he really going to put up those numbers against those teams? Going to go to Alabama, to Texas, to Ole Miss. You got an insanely good Clemson defense week one. You got a salty Tennessee team. I think it's going to be really good later in the season. The competition's tough, man. So, yeah, you might play more games, but you're not playing as many cupcake teams maybe Georgia had last year, which I don't know if we've had a ton of cupcake teams, but the schedule is certainly more difficult this year. But let's also think about the flip side of that, right? Yes, the schedule's tough. Unquestionably, there are some really good teams on this schedule. But if the games are more competitive than they were, let's say, a year ago, where Carson Beck was, out of the game early in the second half in some of those games, well, that means Carson will likely stay in these games longer and have more opportunities to throw the football and more opportunities to put up numbers, to put up passing yards, to put up passing touchdowns. So in some way, even though the schedule is more difficult, I do think the fact that Georgia has to play more teams that could actually push them this year, I think that in some way might actually work in Carson's favor in trying to break some of these single season records. So again, I know that's kind of bold. I know that's a little aggressive, especially like the passing yards. I feel very confident that will happen. Passing touchdowns, that one is certainly a little bit more out there, more of a reach. But I very much do believe that Carson has a realistic opportunity when you consider the number of games a chance to play, the level of competition, and him being able to go deeper into games and just being a second-year starter, being a better version of what he was last year. And he was really freaking good last year. So I do think Carson Beck will break both the Georgia single-season passing record and the passing touchdown record. All right, the second bold prediction I have for you here, guys, and this one will give that first one a run for its money. Some of you might think this is a more bold prediction, and maybe it is. But I do predict that the Georgia Bulldogs will win all three of their road games, their highly anticipated road games against preseason top 6 opponents. We know the Dogs go to Tuscaloosa. We know the Dogs go to Austin. We know in November, the Dogs go to Oxford. All three of those teams right now, preseason, are ranked inside the top 6. There's been a lot made this offseason about this schedule. And don't get me wrong, it is a brutal schedule. It is one of the tougher schedules I've ever seen for Georgia in the regular season. And it has been an offseason narrative of sorts. But that's also kind of my point here. Remember back in 2022, everyone had a good laugh about this at the end of the year, right? They were kind of mocking Georgia, mocking Kirby, mocking our players. But back in 2022, Kirby had this team legitimately convinced that people were saying that we were going to go 7-5. And you'd kind of be hard-pressed to find people back in 2022 before that season saying those things. But our team believed it, man. They bought into it. And there really wasn't like legitimate ammunition to go off of there. But Kirby had them, even with the crumbs he had to work with there in 2022, he had the team eating out of his hand. He had them buying that full-hearted, fully believing that. But now this year, he has some legitimate ammunition, right? Now, look, we're preseason number 1, okay? So it's not like we're being disrespected here. There's no one being disrespected. But Kirby will make it feel that way. He's going to try to do that, guys, because there's been talk. I mean, hey, Georgia got to go to Tuscaloosa. Georgia's had all these issues with Alabama, right? Georgia can't beat Alabama only one time under Kirby Smart, right? Going to Austin, Texas in the College Football Playoff last year. It's going to be a tough spot for Georgia. Oxford, Ole Miss is reloaded, man. Like this is Lane Kiffin going all in, transfer portal king, bringing all these guys in. You got Jackson Dart as a third-year starter quarterback. They are loaded in a lot of people's minds. So there's been a lot of conversation this offseason about, hey, which of those games is Georgia going to lose? Not if Georgia's going to lose one, which one will it be? And look, Georgia might lose one. I can't sit here and tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, there's no way Georgia will lose one of those games. Those are really good football teams. Again, they're preseason top 6. But when you look at those 3 teams in comparison to Georgia, look, this is me. I know some people don't agree, and that's fine. But I, deep down in my heart, just believe that Georgia is better than those 3 teams this year. I do, guys. I believe that Georgia's better than Alabama this year. I believe that Georgia's better than Texas this year. I believe Georgia is certainly better than Ole Miss this year. All right, I believe that. I could be wrong. All right, but in the preseason, based off what I saw last year, based on my very strenuous, lengthy offseason film study of all these teams, I think Georgia is a better team than all those teams. Now, I'm not going to say by wide margins because that's not the case. The margins are small here, guys. These are elite programs. These are elite teams. Georgia very well could go into Tuscaloosa and lose. Very well could go to Austin and lose. Oxford could lose. I don't think that we will, but we could. I think Ole Miss is a little bit different story. I don't really put Ole Miss quite on the level of Texas and Alabama. Their schedule is much easier. Well, it's about on par with what Texas has, but I don't think that team will be as good as those other teams I'm mentioning here. Let's not forget that Georgia beat Ole Miss 52-17 last year, guys, with a 5-touchdown margin, okay? And I know they went and got some guys in the portal. I just did an episode early this week on the podcast side of things, my scouting the enemy of Ole Miss, so I just dove as deep as you'll find into Ole Miss. And as I said on that show, like, yeah, Ole Miss is much better this year than they were last year. They brought in a lot of guys. They addressed a lot of their deficiencies, but they still don't have the quality depth that a team like Georgia has, and they just still don't have as many top-end guys. Their roster just still isn't what Georgia's roster is. It's a 35-point gap last year, so I'm supposed to believe just because Georgia's going to Oxford this year, which is not like a house of horrors for anybody, it's not a super intimidating stadium, I'm supposed to believe that they've made up a 35-point gap with what they did in the transfer portal? Yeah, they've made up some space. They made up some of that gap for sure. But Georgia just didn't sit here and stay static either. Georgia went out and got some guys in the portal. Got Trevor Etienne. Went out and got a guy like Colby Young. Georgia's also going to be better this year. So I don't quite put Ole Miss on that same level. But say, still, preseason, top 16. And when you look at these games, it's not only that I think that Georgia just has a better roster and is better at the most important position. I think Georgia at quarterback and offensive line is better than all 3 of those teams. And I do believe that those are the spots, more than any other position on the field, that you need to be elite at. I would throw defensive line in there as well, which we'll see if we're elite there. We weren't last year. We'll see if we're close to that this year. But quarterback, offensive line, elite, right? And if you had to pick, okay, what spots do you want to be elite at? If you're trying to go on the road and beat top 6 teams, I would say quarterback and I would say offensive line. That's where I would start. And Georgia is elite there. And I also love the matchups here for Georgia in these games. One thing that all 3 of those teams have, Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, they all have what I would classify as very questionable situations in their secondary entering the 2024 season. Bama, yes, look, Malachi Moore, great. Preseason All-SEC, potentially preseason All-American guy, really good football player, played a ton of football for Alabama. He's awesome. But that's really all they have coming back in the secondary, guys. You lose 2 guys at cornerback, and Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry. I mean, Arnold was a first-round guy. McKinstry was late first round or early second round, but 2 highly rated guys coming out of high school, 2 guys that were high on draft boards for the NFL draft. Those guys are gone. Caleb Downs is gone. Okay, Malachi Moore, great, but that's all they have coming back. They very well could be in a situation where they are relying on a true freshman, potentially multiple true freshmen in the secondary. And I always tell you guys, look, I mean, sometimes true freshmen can make impacts, for sure. But do you ever want to be in a position to count on that? If you are, I don't think you're really a true national title contender. If you're counting on that, you might get something. But if you go into a season like relying on a freshman, being a guy like that, that's a tough spot to be in. In the secondary, Bama's kind of there. And you bring Damani Jackson from USC, who was very up and down, more down than up, I would say, at USC. So I do think there's some legitimate questions for Alabama, what they lost from that secondary last year and what they have coming back this year. And if you look at Texas, guys, Texas, yes, College World Playoff team, dominant against the run with Byron Murphy, Tavondre Sweat, guys like that, right? But a little known fact that people don't really want to talk about is that Texas was 116th nationally in pass defense last year, guys. And this year, they're running it back with a lot of the same guys. Yeah, they went out and got a guy or 2 from the portal. They didn't get Jabbar Muhammad, who's a guy they really want to kind of shore up that secondary. They missed on him, went to Oregon. So they're going to try to improve that secondary with a lot of the same guys. Will they be better this year? Probably, right? With another year in the system, there's natural progression. But how much better are we talking? Going from 116th to what, like top 75? I mean, that's better, but is that good enough to beat a Georgia team that has potentially the best quarterback in the country, maybe the future number 1 overall draft pick, an offensive line that really keeps him upright and protects that guy game in and game out in a way that really no other offensive line does in the SEC? I don't know, man. I don't know. And look, here's the other thing, too, with Texas. Again, run defense will not be as dominant. They lost those dudes, okay? They lost those guys up front that were the engine behind that Texas run defense, was a top 5 rush defense last year. You lose Murphy. You lose Sweat. You bring in Bill Murphy, or Bill Norton, who was at Georgia, 4 years? Did he ever play a meaningful snap in his life at Georgia? He goes to Arizona, was good at Arizona, a good-ish. Comes to Texas, and now he's like a difference maker? No, it's just not the case. So Georgia, I believe, will be able to run the football effectively enough against Texas. They already have enough issues in the secondary. If we can run the football and they got to start bringing guys in the box, game over. I just love the matchup there for Georgia against that Texas defense. And Ole Miss, man, you look at that secondary, yeah, their front 6, especially the defensive line, they reloaded. I mean, you got guys like Walter Nolan and Princely Emmanuel. Those guys are legit. Front 6, I respect. Back end, man, it was a problem last year. It'll be a problem this year. They went out and tried to get some guys. You go get a guy from Bama and Trey Amos, who couldn't even really play for Bama last year. Started 1 game because of injury, and he's now supposed to come in and be a plug-and-play starter for Ole Miss, for a team that has national championship aspirations. And you can bring a guy and Brandon Turnage from Tennessee, who is now going into his 6th season of college football. That guy has 6 starts in his first 5 years at the college level. And he's a plug-and-play guy in the secondary that you're going to count on? I don't know, man. I don't know. So I just don't think that's a recipe for success against what I think will be another dynamic Georgia passing attack this year. So I think Georgia's better in terms of its roster. I think the matchups favor Georgia. And again, if you go back to what I said with Kirby, having that ammunition, I do think that having games like this on your schedule where you feel like people are doubting you coming the year, have you gone on the road to these tough spots? Can you really win all 3 of them? It's probably unlikely. I think that helps create a sense of urgency in the offseason and maybe a sharper focus in the offseason that when you get to those games, you're always going to be jacked up to play a game like that, no doubt. But that offseason preparation will put you in a better position to go into those hostile environments and win those football games, right? So I know that's a tall task, man. Look, again, I'm not guaranteeing you that Georgia will win all 3 of those games. But if I had to sit here and predict right now, I think Georgia is better. If Georgia comes close to playing to their standard against those 3 teams on the road, they will win those football games. It's just a matter of what Georgia team shows up. If we play our game, I think we're better, and it doesn't really matter what they do. We'll win those football games. All right, the next prediction I have here, now this one I do like. I believe in this one a lot. Jalon Walker will reach double-digit sacks for the Bulldogs this year. I believe that Jalon Walker is about to explode. If you have listened to any of my videos or podcasts here of the last month or so leading up to the season, you know how high I am on Jalon Walker. I think this guy is a freaking monster. I think he is going to be a guy that everyone will know as like a household name for Georgia by the time we get to the end of the season. He's not that guy right now, but I think that he will grow into that. I think people will know who this guy is. He had 5 sacks a year ago, which actually led the team, but he only played 24% of Georgia's defensive snaps a year ago. Azeez Ojulari had 8.5 sacks in 2020. All right, and that's the highest sack total for any single player in the Kirby Smart era. Guys just don't really rack up a bunch of individual sacks. Azeez had 8.5 in 2020, but he played 53% of our snaps that year. If you go with Walker, he played 24% of our snaps and had 5 sacks last year. He also had the 4th highest pass rush win rate, according to PFF, among returning players this year. 21.5 pass rush win rate for Jalon Walker last year. If his snap count goes up this year, the way that I believe it will. When I was at practice, guys, I saw this guy firsthand with my own 2 eyes. We were putting this guy all over the field. He was getting extensive work with the number 1 unit at inside linebacker, at jack linebacker, obviously in the 3rd down role that he's been in for a couple of years now. But our coaches, I think, have finally realized what we have in Jalon Walker. And they probably have always realized, but hey, how do you get him on the field, right? Well, now we are on a mission to get this guy on the field because he is too good. He's too good to not be on the field. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It is borderline criminal that man only played 12 snaps against Alabama in the SEC Championship last year. Those 12 snaps, he was impactful, but he only got 12 snaps because he didn't have more of a role outside of the 3rd down pass rusher role. That will change this year. So when his pass rush, his snap count total goes up this year with his ability to rush the passer and to do it from different positions and us moving him around, I think that Jalon Walker not only will go over 10 sacks, I think he might clear comfortably this year. I believe in Jalon Walker. I think he's about to have a monster year for Georgia in 2024. All right, next up, the 4th bold prediction I have for you guys. Daylen Everette, cornerback Daylen Everette, will be a first-team All-SEC cornerback in 2024. Now, some of you might be saying, like, that's not that bold, but if you think about the narrative around Daylen Everette a year ago, and really a lot of this offseason as well, he was a very popular punching bag for a lot of Georgia fans last year. And I myself, I got to own it, man. I was critical of Daylen at times, and I think justifiably so. Early last year, he struggled in his first year as a starter. Struggled with ball skills, ball awareness, those things, but he was a first-year guy. And I think we were expecting him to be an elite guy right out of the gate, and he wasn't quite that guy early on. But what I will say about Daylen is as the season progressed, he did what you would want a first-year starter to do. He got better. He got better, man. By the end of last year, he was a different player. Yes, I think it's true. Early last year, he had some legitimate struggles, some real struggles, and it was fair to criticize him. End of the year, I thought he was playing at a pretty high level, man. Like, he was making plays in the ball. His awareness improved dramatically, which that's going to come with more reps. And I think that Daylen Everette right now, as a former 5-star, by the way, let's not forget, this guy's insanely talented. He also, I think I mentioned this before, if you don't follow recruiting that closely, Daylen Everette was committed to Clemson for a while back in high school, and we were able to flip him later in that cycle, and now here he is playing against that same team. So it's kind of an undersold storyline in this game. No one's really talking much about that, but it's kind of an interesting storyline there. But I think that Daylen Everette, at the end of last year, what we saw from him in spring practice, what I saw from out there when I went to practice last week, what I'm hearing about him at practice from other people that I trust, he's showing signs of following a Kamari Lassiter-esque trajectory. Where if you go back to Kamari in 2022, Kamari was good in 2022. By the end of that season, I do believe he was our best cover guy. I said it here on this podcast a couple years back. But early in the year, he had some struggles. Like, he wasn't the same guy he was at the end of the year. And I think the same is true of Daylen, right? Early last year, yeah, some real struggles, but got better by the end of the year. And like Kamari comes in a year or two as a starter last year and was just lights out, man. I think he played at a first-round caliber for us. Obviously, NFL Combine didn't go the way he wanted, and that's why he dropped out of the first round. He's a first-round caliber player, right? If you take the measurements out, take the metrics out of it. And I think Daylen could follow that trajectory. I think this year, in year 2 as a starter, the way he improved last year, now the full offseason, as an incumbent starter, I do believe that we will see a much better version of Dalen Everett and maybe a Kamari last year type jump from year 2 to year 3. I think Dalen can do it. I was very impressed with what I saw from him out there at practice. I've heard some really good things about him. I was very encouraged by what I saw from him at the end of last year. So I'm a believer, man. I'm a believer. I was critical at times last year, but he has made me a believer. And that's one thing we got to do, guys. Like, what might have been true at one point won't necessarily always be true. When we get new information, we've got to be willing to adjust our views and our opinions. And that's what I've done with Dalen Everett. I believe in him. I think he's going to have a big year for Georgia at cornerback. And then finally, number 5, my 5th bold prediction here, the Georgia Bulldogs will return both a kick and a punt for touchdowns in 2024. Now, again, this might be the other one you said, that's not that bold. Actually, guys, if you look at the numbers, it kind of is. We have returned a grand total of 1 punt or kicks for a touchdown since 2018, all right? Mekhi Muse last year against Ball State, that was the first return we had for a touchdown since 2018. That's the first one, guys. It had been almost 5 years. It had been a minute. We've not had 2 returns for a touchdown since Kirby's first year back in 2016. Terry Godwin returned a kick for a touchdown, and Isaiah McKenzie returned a punt for a touchdown that season. Now, we've had good return games, solid return games, but not dynamic, not electric, not elite return games. We just haven't been putting up points in the return game in a minute, guys. But this year, I think that changes. I think it changes in a big way. I think that could be a weapon for us. No one talks about special teams. I'm guilty of it myself at times. I don't talk enough about special teams. But when the margins are small, when you play teams like Alabama on the road, Texas, Ole Miss on the road, Clemson week 1, Tennessee later in the season, when you play teams like that, where the margins are smaller than when you're playing Little Sister of the Poor, the special teams, that can change games. That can win you and lose you football games. We've seen it firsthand, guys. We saw it firsthand multiple times early in Kirby's tenure. We know that. So I think if you look at what Georgia has this year, I think we have a lot more dynamic and explosive options in the return game than we've ever really had under Kirby Smart. We have a ton of options. In the punt return game, I think it'll probably be Anthony Evans. That'd be my projection right now. And that guy is just he's electric, man. He's electricity personified. Dominic Lovett was a dynamic punt returner for Missouri back in 2022. Trevor Etienne was a very strong punt returner for Florida. And then you've got Sokovie White, true freshman, who has those punt return skills as well. All those guys have been getting reps throughout fall camp. I do think it'll be Evans, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was any of those guys. And I think whoever it is, all those guys have the ability to house one on any given punt. Now, kick return is a little bit different, right? With the way the rules have changed and they moved the kickoffs up, right? It's just tougher to return kicks for touchdowns. Most of these now, the legs these kickers have, a lot of them are touchbacks. So you don't have as many opportunities. But if we get opportunities to return kicks this year, I think that we have the guys that can take one back. Again, got Anthony Evans working back there. For kick returners, you also have Dylan Bell, who is a playmaker in his own right. Sokovie White also working on kick returner. And Malachi Starks. I know it's like, what? Malachi Starks? Guys, if you ever watched Malachi play in high school at Jefferson, that guy, yeah, he was a great defender. That's why he was always going to play long term. But he played a little bit of quarterback for them, and he was in the return game, involved in the return game. That guy was crazy athletic with the ball in his hands, elite with the ball in his hands. So that's another guy to watch. I don't think he'll be our primary guy, but he'll be in the mix there. Again, I would probably project Anthony Evans, maybe Dylan Bell to be the top 2 guys in the kick return game. So I do believe it, guys. I believe that we will return not just 1, but 2 kicks for a touchdown this year. I believe that we'll return a punt and a kick for a touchdown, which will be the first time that we have done that since Kirby's first year in 2016. There you go, guys. Those are my 5 bold predictions for the Georgia Bulldogs in 2024. I'll leave it up to you to decide how bold they are and whether they'll actually happen or not. But I'd love to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, again, make sure to subscribe to this channel right now. Like the video, comment. Let me know what you think. Am I crazy? Am I not bold enough? What do you guys think? What are your bold predictions? I would love to hear from you guys, so leave those in the comments, and I will do my best to respond to every single one of them. But thank you for being here, guys. Again, I'll be back next week with some film session videos for you guys, breaking down the Clemson offense and the Clemson defense. I think, guys, those are going to be the most in-depth breakdowns of this Clemson football team that you will find anywhere. At least that's the goal. That's what I've been working on behind the the scenes. I've been in the lab putting this together, and I'm very excited to roll that out next week. So make sure to be back. Check that out. But thanks again for being here, guys. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs.
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.